Good evening. In today's analysis, we are going to look at the issues concerning or surrounding the case of Nnamdi Kanu with Nigerian government. And we will also examine the reasons for his actions, the reasons for his agitations, the reasons for the government taking hold of him and neglecting the activities of Fulani Herdsmen, the ISWAPs, the Boko Harams, the Bandits, and all other Fulani dangerous activities against indigenous Nigerians. It will be noted also that before this time, Nigerians have integrated themselves to some extent, although there are a lot of problems lying because of the British inability to study the characteristics of individual groups or ethnic groups before amalgamating them together. They are not one. It has been established in culture, in religion, culture, and language, which are the essential ingredients for unity of any country. Where there are differences in all these characteristics means that the unity of the country may be at stake if not properly managed by a good leader. Nigeria, as it is known, are made up of three major ethnic groups within the divisions of Nigeria, which was created by the British colonial establishment. You have the north, the southeast, and the southwest. In the north, there is also the middle belt within the northern region. So also the midwest in the southern region. But all these are the problems that Britain could not manage to integrate Nigerians fully before the amalgamation. However, the activities of some of the members of the regions at large have also been a problem since 1945. And these problems had continued and have never been settled. However, the integration and the management of oneself and one community or one ethnic group has been there or not until in the recent times when the Biafra war began. After the war, there was also integration. The people who were affected, the Igbohos, also integrated themselves amongst other Nigerians that fought them. Eastern Nigeria, who were then the Biafra and who were killed, also integrated themselves without rancor, without looking at the non-implementation of the 3 R's, which were known as the reconciliation, reconstruction, and the rehabilitation. They were ignored. Despite that, Igbos or the Easterners continue to integrate themselves with other parts of the country. And yet, there are still the problems. This problem began with the formation of Boko Haram by the northern Islamic leaders. These Islamic leaders continued to fund the Islamic militants in the country, of which on one occasion Buhari praised them during the time when Goodluck Jonathan was the president of Nigeria. Unfortunately, when the present president of Nigeria, who is also a former head of state, and then from the Fulani ethnic group of Nigeria, he had done so much to encourage the Fulanis that are today invading the country. He opened the border for them to come in, especially during the COVID period 2020, and they flooded into Nigeria without visa, without anything. They began to increase the level of attack, especially from the northeast, until it spread out all over the country. This president allowed these foreign invaders from the Sahel region, from other African countries, to flood into Nigeria to attack and capture lands for the Fulanis in Nigeria, and thereby expand their population and the control of Nigerian indigenous people. As a result, there are problems. The government is not listening to anybody, and these people were killing, making inroads from the northeast into the northwest, entering into the north central, proceeding to southwest and the southeast, causing menace, and these in the southern part of the country became compounded by installation of a governor in the name of Uzodinma in Imo State. This increased the level of insecurity not only in Imo State but also across other states in the eastern region. There were problems between the government of Uzodinma as the governor of Imo State being installed by the federal government of Buhari, and also the clash between the newly installed government of Uzodinma and his predecessor, Chief Okorocha, brought insecurity in the southeast. We will watch the Professor Wole Soyinka, who analyzed these very issues concerning Nigeria and why he felt Nnamdi Kanu and Igboho and those from other areas began to agitate for self-determination. It will be a very good interview of which you have to find out yourself, while others were looking at those who were giving the stories as not being realistic. Then the interviews of both Wole Soyinka from Southwest and the Governor Autumn from the North will lecture those who have been in doubt of what brought the insecurity and the activities of agitation in Nigeria. Even the international community, those who have not become aware of what is happening, these agitations have been highlighted by various agitations in various European countries, African countries, inter-American countries like United States of America, Canada, Venezuela, Chile, and all other American countries. This is also happening in Asian countries like Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Thailand, China, and all whatnot. Yet, most of these countries do not understand fully what is going on in Nigeria in terms of political system that has allowed their people to be killed, land grabbed, people being in IDP camps, and all the problems and why the citizens are running out from the country to other countries for safety. All this will be explained to you. You look at the analysis, watch out the reasons these eminent Nigerians are given for insecurity in the country called Nigeria and why the agitations are being promoted and given time by the United Nations because of the system of government being operated and also inability of the Nigerian ethnic groups to integrate with one another fully with open heart and mind. In the us watch the phase 1 of the interview.
This war is on our doorstep. Of course, there has got to be civil mobilization. And if we keep waiting for this to be centrally handled, we're all going to become, if we're not already, slaves in our own land. That for me is personally intolerable. It's not an acceptable condition. And whatever it takes, I stand ready to contribute in any way. And I've made my government understand this. That we are here not just to live, but to live in dignity. Right now, our dignity is being rubbished. My forest has been taken over. It's been shrinking. My normal hunting grounds, yes, it's been shrinking. My family tells me that if I go in depth again, they will have me institutionalized.
What would you be expecting from the president at this time? What do you think he needs to do to break the riot act, if you like, or tell the people that it's no longer business as usual and we are ready to nip this at the bud right now?
Address the nation. Address the nation in very stern, unambiguous terms. Say openly, yes, I know I am the patron of the Cattle Rearers Association, etc., etc. I'm a cattle rancher myself. It's a business, and I run my business on business terms. I do not run my business by killing people. I do not run my business by raping, by displacing, by torturing. I do not run my business by occupying land that does not belong to me. And I'm warning all business people in the food commodity, all you cattle rearers, whatever comes to you for illegal occupation or for trespassing on other people's property is your business. And I'm ordering the army, I'm ordering all the security forces to back citizen effort in flushing you out. I expect nothing less, even at this stage. It's very late already, but it's not too late. This is the language which I expect from President Buhari. And as long as that language does not come, I must consider him quite complicit in what is going on, because the buck stops at his desk.
What is your biggest fear about where we are now?
We may enter a phase of serial skirmishes which get more and more violent, become less and less focused, and swell into, I hate to use the word, may develop into a civil war, and a very untidy, messy one at that. That's my biggest fear. And unless action is taken, and I'm very glad that the governors are coming together and discussing in all seriousness. I'm very glad that they're even pulling in renegade groups like Maiti Allah, for instance, and obviously talking sense, knocking some sense into his head. I noticed into the heads of their spokes, their leaders, their representatives. I noticed that they're now talking about accepting the decision of governors and agreeing to obey the rules. Very different from defiant, arrogant language which they were using when Benue was a totally unconscionable language after people had been killed.
Okay, so let's talk about Sunday Igboho. A Yoruba activist has also taken a stand. He has been in the news in the last couple of days, in the past few weeks. Some are criticizing his stand, some are saying that he's going overboard. You talk about excesses and all that. Have you met him? What do you think about his actions and how he's carrying on?
No.
Yeah, this is a very good question, and we have seen from the eminent professor, the laureate, Olosoyinka, explaining the situation and giving the detail of how the government is not listening and how the members of MACBAN, the type of language they are using. instead of conducting themselves, but they are being aggressive and taking authority, even the government of Buhari not wading in to stop this menace. We are going to again listen to what he has to say further.
Netted a number of illegal weapons, AK-47s, etc., ammunition. We're now in a situation where, of course, Igboho is saying that these weapons were not there, they were planted. Now that's one aspect. We can deal with that later on. But more important for me was the position of the government, saying that the existence of these weapons, quote-unquote existence, in Igboho's place, proved that he was planning war against the state. Now, that position, that statement, very loaded statement, was simply to conflate, deliberately to conflate issues. It was to obscure the fact that Igboho and other people, myself included, have been decrying the depredations on the lives of law-abiding citizens, farmers especially, throughout the whole nation, Benue, Kaduna, Nasarawa, etc., and saying that it's time, and not just civilians. Danjuma, at one stage, called on the people and said, don't trust the military anymore. Defend yourselves, whichever way you can. And other governors, some governors, other voices like governors, have made exactly the same statement. Now, Igboho, even if he had those weapons, he's claiming that his mission was to liberate his people from the tyranny of squatters who now become violent overlords. And he has a good cause in that sense. Testimonies of citizens, farmers especially, who have been brutalized, dehumanized by these squatters who have acknowledged and identified themselves as Fulani. You know, that this decades and decades of this kind of anomalous situation in which the people did not receive the necessary, mandatory, and entitled defense and protection by the security forces, in which sometimes it is the victims who've been jailed, put in prison. There is a recent case in Ibarakma, for instance. We read the personal testimonies of those who were arrested and detained by the police simply for going to challenge those who were tyrannizing over the existence and raping their women. So now, you have a situation where a government is saying, oh yes, the existence of these weapons means that Igboho was planning armed insurrection against the state. So the whole thing from beginning to the end just stinks. The raid, the motivation has become very, absolutely implausibly, degraded. And right now we're in the kind of situation which we have warned against. We called on the government to accept its responsibilities. And when eventually our citizens say, enough, we're going to protect ourselves, you say they are arming against the state. A language which we never used to describe or to accuse those who have been proven to be the aggressors in this case. So where are we, you tell me?
After raiding his home, the DSS had come out to say that Sunday Igboho is wanted and that he should turn himself in. What would you advise he does in this situation?
Well, my advice is not even so much Igboho, but to the government, that they should stop pursuing this person as a criminal, because you have begun by acting in a criminal fashion against him. Because if and when Igboho comes to trial, I guarantee you it's the government which will be very, very embarrassed. Very embarrassed. So it's not even in the interest of the government. I think they should just tell Igboho, we made a mistake. We should not have acted in this way. You are no longer wanted. Please go back to your home. In fact, escort him to his home, quietly, and let him resume his normal life. To declare him wanted. And again, this is another issue of language. I read in some papers, Igboho is in hiding. Well, but more accurately, he's probably just gone underground, to protect himself and perhaps to be able to continue his declared struggle. I'm not talking now about the secessionist aspect of the struggle. No, I'm talking about what Igboho came out to do and which I believe is still his mission in this nation, to protect, defend his own people, and to let the aggressors know that they are not lords of this nation or any section of it, apart from what they are constitutionally entitled to. So I think the government, it's in no interest. If you bring Igboho to trial, you're going to get mud in your face, clearly. As far as I'm concerned, it's up to Igboho to decide. He knows what the circumstances were. He knows what happened before his people were killed. And he's the only one who can judge, who can decide for himself. I cannot advise him.
Yes, the last time we spoke, Professor, you talked about the methods of Sunday Igboho and how that there were concerns around his methods and that there were talks going on and a lot of things going on, that we couldn't see, to make sure that in as much as he was standing for the right thing, that his methods would align with what is also right. So where are we on that?
Well, when you talk about methods, for instance, I want to distinguish. There are two very heavy issues on our hands at the moment, even though both allegedly bear the name secession. What Igboho stands for is not too dissimilar to what Nnamdi Kanu, for instance, stands for. The methods in terms of what we know, what is self-declared by these individuals, the method of Kanu, for instance, is very different from the method which we are able to ascribe to Igboho up to now. Not what the government is alleging, but up to now. Igboho has joined others, for instance, in holding rallies all over the country. There has been no accusation of any violence, none whatsoever. Guns have not been fired, houses have not been burnt. Okay, after he went and told this herdsman who was accused of things, told him, leave town, there's no evidence that he was responsible for the violence that followed. They claim that some houses were burned afterwards, but it was proven that all this took place after he left. Nothing has been able to attach to him in terms of violence. So we have that approach to what you might even call a meeting of minds, and we have to separate all those things, just as we must separate the principle of separation from whether we actually want it. Let me make this quite clear, because very often this is conflated and it makes discourse very, very difficult. It's first of all the issue of the right of a people to secede or not secede, to amalgamate or not amalgamate. That's one thing, and for me, that is incontrovertible. People are born free as individuals and as groups, as community. They have historic aspects of history which make them recognizable as one entity, and whether they have a right to move out or move in, that for me is a fundamental principle of human existence and even social evolution. You see, one begins to understand, for instance, why, very strangely, some people got up and stopped the teaching of history in this country. We recognize, we know for certain now, and it's become evident, that is because they don't want people to have a historic reference, even within their own society. In other words, if they studied history, they know that they don't even have to go back centuries. They don't even have to go outside to Asia, to Europe, whether you're talking about England, the Irish, and the Welsh, or the Bretons in France, or the Catalans in Spanish. You don't even have to go out. That if you stay within your own history, you can elicit certain principles of cohabitation, which justify whatever preference you have at this moment. That's one of the reasons why, strangely, history was abolished. Now, that's one, the principle. Two, however, what do you and I want? Do we, as personal preferences, want to stay together, or do you think it's perhaps best that we should separate? That's a secondary issue. And as long as people keep conflating those two, positions will be mistaken, paths towards even achieving one's own preference will be blocked because of the emotionalism which is attached to staying together, this pietistic, theological concept of this is better than the other. You know, let's put that aside and talk about the practical issues. What makes it possible, rational, beneficial, productive, progressive for people to stay together or to stay apart? That then makes it possible for me to say, let us say to Kanu, listen, it is better we stay together. Given history, given the economic issues, given the geopolitics of our moment, etc., then we can actually talk. But there can be no discourse if you keep thundering against all evidence, against history, against contemporary realities all over the world, saying the sovereignty of Nigeria is non-negotiable. You're saying there's no discussion. And that's when people like Igboho, they transit from merely defending themselves against internal enemies, especially when they see that those internal enemies appear to be supported by the state, by the force of the state. That's when they then transit from that situation of direct, focused, internal obstacle, and then transit to say, okay, enough is enough, let's go. That's why I say we must distinguish between those two.
Yes, let me just ask you, Prof, straight on. Do you support the call for a Yoruba nation then? You personally, do you support the call for a Yoruba nation?
I don't like the sound of a Yoruba nation any more than I like the sound of a Tiv nation, of an Igbo nation, a Chikere nation. No. The reason is this. There are certain pejorative overtones, certain chauvinistic overtones attached to it. That's not the issue. The Yoruba, for instance, can say, and when you talk about Yoruba nation, are we talking about the creation of a Yoruba nation within Nigeria only, or across the colonial borders into Cotonou, into Republic of Benin, where you know Yorubas exist, and moving on to Togo, you know, even when you get to Ivory Coast, still see communities of Yoruba. So when you talk about Yoruba nation, I have to understand exactly what you mean. Do we even talk about the Yoruba in the diaspora or not? So it's a question which for me, which is not for me to answer at this particular moment. All I know is this, that on a sentimental level, and of course sentiment is very different from objective reasoning. On a sentimental level, yes, I would prefer us to try and mend and manage what we have, but under certain very rigorous conditions. And that is it.
What
the condition, decentralization. We have to move away completely from this constitution which was imposed on us by an internal neo-colonial force called the military. Now, if it had worked, if it were working, my position might be different. You know, very often pragmatism, as you know, especially if the results of pragmatism are positive, then we tend to say, okay, forget principles, forget, the basics of existence. Why don't we go along the pragmatic way? So my conditions are very, very, if you like, non-negotiable. That we've got to get away from the present political arrangements because they clearly are not working. They are creating internal overlords. They are creating a skewed, a lopsided revenue sharing system. They are robbing these arrangements, robbing Paul to pay Saul, or is it the other way around? I've forgotten this expression.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Robbing one to the other. So we haven't even reached that point of answering that question yet, because we can go in a transitory way and say, okay, let us take care of all the anomalies and then see whether people's positions change or not. But right now, what we have is not a nation, but a basket case. It's a real basket case, which is just shriveling and disintegrating all over the place, and all the contents are spilling over the basket. And all we're trying to do is say, oh, hold it there, grab it there, cover it there, cover that leak, and so on. A nation can't continue like this. It's obvious. And some people are more impatient than others. That's all.
Let's talk about the arrest.
Thank you very much. And we have listened to the eminent professor, and he has cleared his mind on what is going on in Nigeria as a country. He has given his own option. Give him his own option. He would like, considering all other factors, would like a Yoruba nation to exist where he believes he can exist without rancor. That is what he has finally informed Nigerians at last. But we will continue to see again what the next interviewer, Autumn, will say concerning what is happening in Nigeria. Now let us hear from him directly, his own experience that makes him wonder if Nigeria is one, if the Fulanis are here to kill everybody.
Who are Fulani bandits from Niger, from Mali, from all these things? They will come and take over the villa. They will go to government houses and take over. Mark my word, just like what happened in Afghanistan, will happen here if Mr. President doesn't rise up. What can Mr. President say 7 years running that PDP did? PDP left 190 or thereabout naira per dollar. How much was petrol sold? How much was the economy? How many industries did we have? How many, we only heard about Boko Haram in the Northeast. Today it is everywhere. It is in Benue. Every day they are killing in Benue. They are killing in the North Central. Several states in the North Central. Nobody is going to farm. Even me, I cannot go to farm. Even when I was attacked, I could not be given the privilege of having justice. I was told that security men arrested 13 Fulani and one Juku man and one thief man, and today they have freed those Fulani men. The people that are prosecuting is the thief man and the Juku man, who is a fisherman, and the thief boy is my own cousin. Where when he was with me, when I was being shot at, he could have been killed too. And so this is the level of injustice that is happening. You talk about justice, you talk about corruption. This government does not have right to be talking about corruption. Corruption is called APC government today as it is. They have no moral right. In fact, I want to call on Mr. President. If he is a man of integrity, as he was known in 2015, he should free Jolly Gammon. He should free Governor Darie, he should free all those people that they are prosecuting for. They have no business in saying that prosecuting those who are corrupt, because this government is more corrupt. All this money that they are just stealing in broad daylight and are making things very difficult for people. Why should they be talking about corruption again? The young man is doing his best, who is in the EFCC, but he's being frustrated. Now he cannot prosecute or arrest anyone except he gets clearance from the presidency. I'm aware of this. If you check all these people who are in government, look at the current national chairman of APC.
Thank you very much for listening to both speakers. We have heard them. They have demonstrated what is happening within the government circle, the security of the nation, while people are being killed, and both speakers were able to indicate that it is the Fulanis that are killing indigenous Nigerians, grabbing lands, and making life difficult for Nigerians. As a result, people began to agitate, of which you had when the eminent professor signaled the reasons why agitation came about, and when asked that question, he gave every evidence, every analysis that showed the reasons why Igboho and Nnamdi Kanu agitate. And when you look at the agitation level, the more or less the Yorubas get the benefit, that is those who are in the western part of Nigeria. They are allies to the north that fought the southeastern state. But despite all this, the southeasterners, the Igbos, have not taken it so much against them, but they continued to do their business. Yet the government denied them all the amenities, even while distributing to other geopolitical zones. They are denied. And with this, the agitation highlighted, and these are the good reasons why the indigenous people of Biafra is getting support all over the world. With this analysis, we come to the end of this program. The program is just to give preliminary insight on why the agitation began and why Nnamdi Kanu, who leads the indigenous people of Biafra, has been detained because the government want to stop the agitation. They want the leader to stop everything about the agitation. But the government has killed thousands of people, members of the indigenous people of Biafra, members of MOSOP, who began this struggle earlier. Now the government is still prosecuting Nnamdi Kanu, and from the analysis you find out that both the Middle Belt and the southern Nigeria, which comprises of the southwest and the southeast, are being threatened, and they are indeed against what the Fulanis are doing with the president and their groups within the government. In the next episode, we will now go into the judgment of appeal court and the implications within the international community. The international community are watching. In fact, with every evidence, with everything within the context of what they are watching, there is no doubt that the preparation, if Nigeria does not take time, the separation they feared, especially those Fulanis, the separation they feared will come to them as a dream. They are doing everything to stop it, but they are not watching the actions they take. To them, Nigeria is or has been given to the Fulanis, neglecting the fact that they are visitors, should there be any language to create for that. Yes, they came into Nigeria, conquered the Hausas, conquered the part of the West, and integrated within the Nigerian context. But still, they are not satisfied. They want to ensure that they conquer the entire country and dominate everything. Well, when we go to the next, we will find out what is happening. And we thank all our listeners and say, God bless you, and watch out for the next episode. Bye. Indeed, do not forget to subscribe, share our videos, like it, give your comment, and give us thumbnail. That is very, very important. You subscribe, give us your thumbnail, and with this, we thank you very much and say, God bless you. Peace be unto you all. Bye.